listener production.
Hello, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, how do top secret US war plans get accidentally sent to a journalist on a group chat? We speak with tech expert Trevor Long on how this major security breach actually occurred and why it's a massive wake-up call for all governments, even here in Australia, who could now be dangerously exposed to sophisticated hackers. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Tuesday, the 25th of March. US President Donald Trump has responded to those allegations of a serious security breach after a prominent journalist was accidentally added to a group chat where top secret war plans were discussed. The Atlantic magazine's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, says he was included in the high-level chat on Signal, which is not approved by the US government for sharing sensitive information. A number of top government officials were discussing details of upcoming strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels. National Security Council spokesperson Brian Hughes says, quote, "The message thread that was reported appears to be authentic, and we are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain." At a press conference, Mr. Trump says he was unaware of the breach.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it.
Meantime, US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth has denied top secret information was shared with the journalist.
Weapons used.
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's it.
The Queensland government has revealed the venues for the 2032 Olympic Games in a major overhaul of planning. Queensland Premier David Crisafulli has apologised for breaking a key election promise of no new stadiums by announcing a 60,000-seat main stadium will now be built at Victoria Park. Now it's time to get into our deep dive with tech expert Trevor Long on our top story this afternoon and that major security breach in the US. The National Security Council has confirmed a leading journalist was added to a top secret group chat by mistake, where war plans with US government officials were discussed about upcoming strikes in Yemen. The Trump government is now in major damage control, but the alarming breach has raised serious questions about how this could happen and what it means for governments both here and overseas about sharing top secret information online and how that could leave all of us dangerously exposed. Trevor, thanks so much for joining us. Can you believe what we are learning today, if these allegations are true, that somehow a journalist was included in this secret chat group from the US government officials about possible war plans?
Tash, I want to say I can't believe it, but we've all made that mistake in a chat group. We've all got that WhatsApp group of mates and we've sent the wrong thing to the wrong. I just feel like it's kind of the obvious thing that's going to happen when you're using these platforms. It is remarkable.
Now, apparently the messages went through on a service called Signal. Now, from what I can understand, that is not approved by the US government for sharing sensitive information. So can you unpack what Signal is, and if it's not approved, why were they using this forum?
So Signal is one of probably 3 core apps, and there's many more that have been built over the years that are essentially encrypted messaging platforms. And by encrypted, I mean that, Tash, if I send you a message on Signal and you read it, that's fine. Only we can see that message. If someone was to get our phone, they can't get into it unless they have my Face ID, my password. The message cannot be intercepted in between and read. So it's encrypted on the way through. That's the benefit of it for the average user and for businesses and the like. But Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, the big 3 that are doing this, that people use for these things, the government, if you're going to allow it, needs to verify every chain, every link in the chain when it comes to that platform. And there's no way they would probably ever do that for a commercial platform that they don't have any direct control over. So I think that the reason it's happening is because of simplicity. And it's probably just that they wanted to either subvert the normal processes or they just went for simplicity. They went for the lazy way forward. They went for the easy path rather than using whatever are the approved platforms.
So in regards to what the implications are for government officials, we know that there are many platforms people can use. There was controversy over TikTok here in Australia with local government members not allowed to, or local government officials not allowed to use that platform. Is there a big security issue with government officials using these platforms that can be intercepted?
It is a remarkable hypocrisy that exists in governments worldwide around all these platforms, TikTok included. So the example I would give is the federal government here in Australia. You're not allowed as a member of parliament or a staff member to use your federally issued telephone to use TikTok. But they're all using it on the burner phone that they bought down at the local telco. And I think the same probably is happening in the US, where they get a phone. And when you work in government, the phone you're given, it doesn't have the app store. You can't just download things like you can for you and I. So it feels restricted. And so you're going to have another phone in your pocket. You're going to have that other number. The reason it's a concern is because if for any reason, any way, whether it's a state actor, a government, or a commercial entity, Signal or Telegram or Meta that own WhatsApp, if they ever want to find out information about users, who's to say they're not planting some sort of little code in the device that shares that location, shares that information back? If we know the location of the Vice President of the United States in almost real time because of an app he's using, that's a massive security risk.
Talking about security risks, we've seen basically the US government in damage control. Mr. Trump has come out saying he's not aware of these allegations with this journalist being on the chat group. The Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has actually come forward slamming the journalist and slamming The Atlantic, which is the magazine this journalist was working for. How much of a security stuff-up is this?
It's massive because even at the very basic level, right? Because you can add anyone to a group on Telegram or Signal or WhatsApp. When you add someone to a group, that person learns a lot about the people in the group. So if we, Tash, created a group of people that work on your podcast and in my organisation, and we're all in one group, I have the names and numbers of everyone that's in that group. And so first and foremost, this journalist, if this is to be believed, probably has a lot more details now about all the people that were in that group that they probably shouldn't have. Now, whether that's their government-issued phone or a burner phone, either of those things is not good for anyone outside of the pool of politics to have. So that in itself is a drama. And then what else has been shared in that group, what was said, what was responded, even an emoji, thumbs up, thumbs down, or laughter to a comment is essentially a reaction. And so what else was said in the presence of that journalist, and how much was said before it was discovered that they were in the group, and how many other groups have they created that include people that shouldn't be in the group?
Trevor, you make a great point there because as I mentioned earlier, Signal, which is what they were apparently communicating on about these top secret war plans, is not approved by the US government for sharing any sensitive information. So the first question I have is, what are these government officials, what other platforms are they using? What other mistakes have they made that we're just not aware of as yet?
I think everyone's aware of the Hillary Clinton email drama. Now, that was a very simple thing. In government, there's approved email servers. The Hillary Clinton team created their own server so they could do all this work without it being part of the government situation and monitored and all that stuff. That's the kind of thing that's going on when you're creating a separate app, when you're using an app that's not approved. Because if you make the mistake once, and that's why you get a phone that has these restrictions, that's why the government would put restrictions on devices. They don't want you to make the mistakes. A mistake has happened. I'm desperate to find out whether this is their primary device or their essentially burner, if you want to call it that. And therefore, what else are they doing on that phone? So do they have email on that phone as well? Are they sending other messages using iMessage or Facebook or any other platforms? Essentially, if you wanted to take it seriously, someone needs to get those phones and look at what else they've been doing on them.
What message do you think all governments, including here in Australia, should take from this fiasco right now? Because if it is proven to be this massive security breach, what do you think government should learn about this scenario?
Government should learn that there are rules in place for a reason, restrictions on IT. And everyday people listening to this would know that, on their computer at work, they're not allowed to download an app or something because you've got to get IT's approval. That's to keep you safe. That's to keep the computer safe. That's to keep the network safe. It's far more important at a government level because it's not just about keeping the government computers and devices and everything safe. It's about keeping information safe. So I think everyone in positions of power should realise that mistakes can be made. I can access accidentally send a TikTok to my wife that I meant to send to the boys, that's going to result in a fun conversation that night, right? That's very different to sending, a discussion paper or a, potential proposal for a nuclear submarine to the wrong person. It's a huge risk, and that's why they have to stick to approved platforms and approved devices and use nothing else.
Trevor, we know right now, considering what's happening in the world with great instability, we know there are very, very sophisticated hackers that would love to get access to top secret information from all different governments. Do you think this also puts up a couple of red flags that if they are doing this makes these top government officials and top secret information that could have massive implications, that could be accessed by hackers?
They are now targets. Targets not for anything other than every possible internet security problem that exists. So I don't know if you remember, there was a case maybe 2 years ago where the Australian Federal Police had created an app that criminals around the world were using, and that's how they caught the criminals. Just think about that. The police used an app to catch criminals. The criminals weren't aware it was happening. What's to say the criminals, the hackers, the underworld, the state actors in other countries haven't created apps, Signal or otherwise, that these politicians and other people could use that could essentially unearth information about them? It's a huge risk. And, I think this exposes a real problem with basic communication and our mobile devices at a top secret security level.
Trevor, thanks so much for joining us.
A pleasure.
That was tech expert Trevor Long. And that's it for this episode of The Briefing Afternoon Edition. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss our episodes or our deep dive of the day. You could also follow us on our socials, on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube. You just need to search Listener Newsroom. That's spelled LISTNR. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company. See you tomorrow.